I'm John Diarman of the Coquille Sword Group, and today we've got a short little video for you on the 4 pillars of Russian martial arts. The 4 pillars work as a kind of guide stone, a sort of true north through which we judge and manage our work. Whereas, say, the work of Japan is very technical, right? There is a correct way to throw Coquille, right? And anything that deviates from that is wrong. In the Russian method, what's important is that the technical concepts have been followed, assuming, of course, the result is desired, right? Desirable. In other words, that you have success, right? So these 4 pillars help us sort of navigate that kind of nebulous range where it's like, oh, we're using this concept to work on the dude, right? So the first of these pillars is breathing. Now, breathing is very important to everybody, right? But it's an important consideration in the Russian methods specifically. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through the specific science of why we breathe the way we do and what has been found to sort of collaborate our own internal mythology. What's important to understand is that breathing acts as a bridge between our mind and our body, right? It is one of the few sort of automatic processes that we can take over manually, and because of its sort of connection with the vagus nerve and sort of how that goes on to affect all of our body, being able to breathe in a way that is productive and appropriate for your situation is important. As a general rule, we want to continue our breath. In other words, we don't want to have areas where we are holding it, right? We don't want to pause it. We definitely don't want to pause it with tension, right? We tend to breathe from the belly, nice deep breaths, and we tend to focus on the exhalation. So the imagery we use is of a plastic bag, right? The plastic bag is just sitting there. It's full of air, right? We crush it using effort to exhale, right? And then the moment we stop applying that pressure, the bag opens on its own, pulling in air, right? So we focus on the exhalation and just relax for the inhalation, right? The next of the 4 pillars is posture. Now, posture in the Russian martial arts means that you keep your spine quite straight. You don't accentuate the S-curve of the spine. So, just as in the Japanese method, you tuck your tail, relax your shoulders forward, and your head pulls high, like a puppet, right? Unlike the Japanese method, the lower body from the hips, from the legs down, is not necessarily a part of posture. In other words, you could be bent in any sort of weird angle as long as you had that straight line from the tip of your head to the tip of your tail, right? This will become more evident once we start getting into some of the fencing work, some of the Fechtovania. An easy way to practice this is to find a flat wall or pillar, right? Lean against it. Your butt and your shoulder blades should touch while everything else doesn't. And tuck your tail and relax the small of your back against the surface, right? If you can't feel it at first, use your hand. Reach around, feel the space that your trying to move into the small of your back. Once you get this feeling, then you can step away and try and just hold it, right? Move side to side, shimmy a bit with your hips, and then back up to it and see how you've maintained it. It's a little tricky at first to get used to and to get the sensation of, because it's quite foreign, especially for us Americans. But once you get used to it, it's quite natural, and you really begin to see the utility of it, especially when it comes to wrestling, right? Where you're having a lot of load put against your spine in that sort of lateral motion. The third of these pillars is relaxation. A major tenet among all of the historical Russian martial arts is that excessive tension leads to exhaustion, self-inflicted internal damage, and generally slower and weaker technique. That seems very counterintuitive, especially to us in the West, where we are all He-Man, right? Superman, big muscles, and we're using them all the time, and we're pushing, and we're dragging, and we get that burn feeling. We're just like, oh, so strong. But unfortunately, how we perceive our internal feeling of strength, what we associate with inside ourselves as that feeling of strength and power being put forward, simply does not match output as compared to working with a more relaxed method. Now, to be clear, relaxed does not mean limp. It does not mean a loose noodle. It doesn't mean, right? That's not what relaxed is. What we're specifically looking at is not using excessive tension. In other words, using enough tension that our form is maintained, but not beyond that, right? In other words, we're not hooking up a car battery to a flashlight, right? We just use a AA, right? The last of the pillars is movement, right? And there's a lot more to movement than we can go into, and it'll be much simpler to just observe it in motion, to see the work in play. Now, all four of these pillars sort of lead into each other. It's hard to breathe without good posture. It's hard to relax without good breathing. It's hard to move without good posture, right? And they build each other up or they break each other down, which is why they're sort of our cardinal pillars. And they are definitely the thing to focus on in the beginning, as we will see from the piece of work that we're going to be looking at in our next video. So, as always, if you want to understand more, you have to pick up a sword and go train.